Phil Goff has been unceremoniously sacked as UK High Commissioner after having a crack at US President Donald Trump. Winston Peters swiftly declared Goff's position was untenable and tasked his Secretary of Foreign Affairs with finding a replacement. In fact, Peters moved so quickly to sack Goff, he didn't even consult the Prime Minister first, before telling media he didn't need to, declaring, "I made him the Prime Minister." Here's senior political correspondent Jenna Lynch.
Forever prone to a gaffe, Phil Goff landing his diplomatic foot squarely in his mouth.
President Trump has restored the bust of Churchill to the Oval Office, but do you think he really understands history?
And getting a plane ride home for the pleasure, sacked on the spot.
I've worked with Phil Goff and known him for a long time. I've worked in government with him. It's just those seriously disappointing decisions one has to make.
Goff was attending a public Q&A session in London when he asked a question of Finland's foreign minister.
Phil Goff, New Zealand High Commissioner. I was rereading Churchill's speech to the House of Commons in 1938 after the Munich Agreement.
Calling on the history books to draw a parallel between Donald Trump's apparent appeasement of President Putin to try and end the Ukraine war.
You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
And then British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's appeasement of Hitler to try and avoid World War II.
And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine.
Churchill had opposed Chamberlain's approach.
And he turned to Chamberlain, he said, you had the choice between war and dishonour. You chose dishonour, yet you will have war.
Then, to muffled laughter in the room, Goff's career-ending clangor.
But do you think he really understands history?
When Winston Peters found out about it, it was over. He sent out a statement calling the comments deeply disappointing and said Goff's position was untenable.
When you are in that position, you represent the government and the policies of the day. You're not able to free think. You are the face of New Zealand.
Goff had barely landed in London before landing in hot water upon hosting a New Zealand delegation for the coronation of King Charles. He forgot the karakia to begin,
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Then offended the kingitanga.
Hands up anyone here that has been to a coronation before.
The late Kingi Tuheitia raising his hand, of course, he'd been to his own coronation.
I've actually just expressed significant disappointment at what has taken place here. We have our own coronation.
But that only had domestic implications. This had the potential to catapult New Zealand into a spat with the Trump administration at a time of heightened geopolitical tension.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people.
Yes. Though former Prime Minister Helen Clark called it a thin excuse for sacking him, posting on social media, one assumes NZ government is super sensitive to Trump administration. Prima facie, the question is not a sackable offence.
I don't think they were wise comments for Phil to make. I'm not going to pass judgment on whether or not that would be sufficient to remove him from the job, because ultimately that judgment rests with only one person, and that's Winston Peters.
And as it turns out, it was Peters' decision alone. He did not consult with the Prime Minister.
Because I'm the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Bristling when reminded Christopher Luxon is the Prime Minister.
I know he's the Prime Minister. I made him the Prime Minister.
Why wouldn't you tell the Prime Minister that you were going to sack the UK High Commissioner?
Because in no way was I required to. I advised him of what I'd done. That's how it goes.
Does it undermine the Prime Minister when you say things like, I made him the Prime Minister?
No, I just said that I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs and I know what my job is. I've had it for over 20 years, so why would I have to answer the stupid question I was asked?
It appears Winston Peters answers only to Winston Peters.
Well, OK, Jenna, should Winston Peters have given the Prime Minister a heads up?
Well, with one of the most plum diplomatic jobs that New Zealand has, the British High Commissioner, you would think that a heads up might be appropriate. It seems that Winston Peters has taken that question quite literally, that he did not consult with the Prime Minister himself or talk to him himself until afterwards. But I'm told that behind the scenes the system was working. Peters' office did give notification to the Prime Minister's office that Goff was about to be sacked before he was dealt the final blow himself. Now, for obvious reasons, New Zealand does not want to get offside with the Trump administration, but timing is a big thing here. It's expected that Winston Peters will likely soon make a trip to Washington, D.C., so he will want smooth sailing, no ruffling of feathers heading into that. As for what the Prime Minister thinks about not being consulted, he said he didn't expect to be, that he expects his ministers to have total accountability over their portfolios, and as for that comment that Winston Peters made him the Prime Minister, Luxon responded that he was very happy that he made Winston Peters the Minister for Foreign Affairs.